So it's Friday morning, and although you can't tell it from this video clip, it's 17 degrees, and I can't wait to get out of here. My brother and I have been filling fuel jugs this morning and getting the nitrous bottles ready, while Allison was in the shop working on getting all of our merchandise shipped out. Vicky, on the other hand, was trying to make sure we were all caught up on answering emails and dealing with these carburetors that I'd given away the night before. At this point, I was pretty much ready to go. I just needed to load some tools and put a fresh bottle in the trunk of the Malibu and finally wrap it up with a bottle heater before it was time to close the trunk, fire up the car, and back it outside so we could load it on the trailer. And as usual, my two four-legged associates escorted me out. Tommy and Allison are going to take care of the dogs, while Vicky and I are gone to North Carolina to do some testing this weekend with the Malibu. Uncle Jimmy Dale has been peer pressuring me to light both kits on this thing during testing, and he's also been peer pressuring my brother to pull some shenanigans as well. Thankfully, I caught on to his before I pulled out of the driveway. Don't you ever put that in my truck again. Once I kicked Jeremy's nuts to the curb, I made sure that Vicky had remembered everything she was going to forget before we pull out of the driveway. And then finally, it's time to hit the road and head south, towards blue skies and warmer weather. On our way down, I was teaching Vicky how to film without capturing her own reflection in the window. We were making pretty good time, and I was excited to see how the old 64 was going to do this trip compared to the last one. Last time, I didn't even make it to the Ohio River before I was broke down with a plugged fuel filter. Now, I had made a short run down to Kentucky just a few days ago to get that 65 Chevy 2 for Billy, and we didn't have any problems then. So I felt pretty confident by the time we got to Ravenswood, West Virginia, our fuel system problems were a thing of the past. We stopped right by the big bridge and topped off the fuel tanks at a little station before we jumped back on 77 to head farther south down through West Virginia, which always seems to be the longest part of this trip. We were making our way through Charleston, West Virginia, just about sunset, and we decided we'd stop and get a bite to eat real quick before all the sit-down restaurants closed and forced us to settle for fast food. I'll give you one guess where we ended up stopping for dinner. After a little bit of window shopping, as usual, we jumped back on the West Virginia Turnpike and made our way through the East River Mountain Tunnel that links Bluefield, West Virginia to Rocky Gap, Virginia. The second tunnel is at Big Walker Mountain. Once you get through that tunnel, it's about 55 miles from there across the Blue Ridge Mountains through Fancy Gap, and finally at the bottom of the mountain, the North Carolina state line. We continued south on 77 down to 421 over to Wilkesboro to the Hampton Inn, which is probably the cleanest, most well-kept hotel I think I've ever stayed in anywhere. Vicky went inside to check in while I got the truck situated and everything unpacked out in the parking lot. After a long trip, we went inside and got a good night's rest so we could get back up the next morning and head across town to Carolina Performance, where they were ready for us to bring the Malibu in and strap it back down on the dyno to test not only two different carburetors, but two different fuels, and to get some idea how much difference there is between dynoing on slicks, which I was on last time, and the 275/6015 Mickey Thompson drag radials that the Malibu's on now. Since it's been so cold up home, the Malibu hasn't had a bath in weeks. And since it was so cold last night, I wanted to take the car up the road and warm up the rear axle and the transmission really good before we strap it on the dyno. So I figured I'd kill two birds with one stone. Vicky and I drove the Malibu straight uptown to the Ride with Pride car wash to give the Malibu a quick rinse off to remove all the road grime and salt dust that build up on the car on our trip down. The last couple times I've wiped a car off, I've used some of that Jax Wax waterless SiO2 ceramic detailing spray, and I could definitely tell it made blowing all that crap off the car a lot easier at the car wash. Anyway, once I got back to the shop, I wanted to back the car inside and wipe it all down and dry it off so that it didn't water spot before we strap it down on the dyno and start making pulls. At least that way, if the dyno session doesn't go very well, the car will at least look good sitting there. Alright guys, so we're here at Carolina Performance, and this time we've got the Malibu on here, but it's on radials. Last time we were here it was on slicks. I also couldn't lock the converter, which I'm not really sure that's going to make a big difference here today. But it's still on winter blend E85 at the moment. What we want to do today is go ahead and make a pull with it on radials and see how much of a difference just the radials make, because the slicks take a little bit more power to turn on the rollers. So it should make a little bit more power on the radial. The other thing is it's on a 750 carburetor right now. I had the 950 on it the last time I was here. So I've got the 750 on it, on a radial. We're gonna pull it, and then we're gonna switch to the 950 carburetor and see how much difference there is between the 750 and the 950. And hopefully by that time, we're just about out of Winter Blend E85. And then we're gonna put some Ignite Red in it and see what that does. See if that makes any more power on Ignite Red. And then once we get plenty of Ignite Red through the fuel system, we're gonna start turning kits on. So.
And that's when you need to don your coon hat.
Yeah. You guys ready to get this going?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it.
All right, what's the deal?
All right, so what'd it make, Robbie?
451, 737 torque.
All right, so what did it make the last time we were here?
448 and 691 torque.
So it made more power this time.
Three horsepower?
Oh, 3 horsepower?
Yeah, 3.
So the radials spin a little bit easier, but with a smaller carburetor, it actually made more power on the radial is what we're saying. Okay. Let's make one more pull exactly the same and just baseline and make sure we're consistent first. I always like to do that. I like to make 2 pulls, make sure the transmission, converter, and everything's warm, the engine's warmed up, which we drove it up and gave it a bath, so it should be fairly warm. But let's make one more pull just like that and see where it comes out so we can make sure we're consistent with everything, okay?
Sounds good.
Something came out from underneath.
Hard to tell.
Huh.
All right, so there's 2 poles back to back. Are they pretty close?
Yep, within 5 horsepower.
Within 5 horsepower. So we've got a really good idea where we're at. What did it make the second pole?
456.
456, and how much torque?
It says 774.
774. Okay, so with that baseline, what do you think we ought to do now? Just go ahead and make another pull and then lock the converter and see what difference it makes?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. All right, because we're still on Winter Blend, we're on a 750 carburetor on radials, and I think that number is going to pick up when we put the 950 carburetor back on it. But we'll see what happens. Let's go ahead and lock the converter one time with the 750 carburetor, and let's see what it does. So what do we have with the converter lock?
About 22 horsepower.
More?
Yeah, 22 horsepower more, so you have 480 and 659 torque. But the thing with the torque dropping down would be
Right.
where the converter was locked. It's not hitting the converter as hard through the rollers.
Right. So it made 480 to the wheels on motor with a 750 on Winter Blend E85, just locking the converter. So now, let's go ahead and throw the 950 carburetor on it and see what it does. All right, so we took the 750 off. This is the 950. The big difference between the 750 and the 950 is the 950 has a bigger throttle blade and a much larger venturi. The venturi is the hole that the booster sets in. This carburetor flows a lot more air. Should pick up with the 950 on it. The reason I've got the 750 on is because the 750 cruises around.
Yeah, that's our cruising carburetor.
Yeah, that has a lot better street manners than the 950. Now, over the last several weeks, I've worked on both of these carburetors a little bit, changing the low-speed air bleeds to try and clean up tip-in and part throttle cruise. This has drastically increased fuel economy and the ability to cruise around with the converter locked at low RPM. Mostly that's due to the fact that we're on winter blend E85, but the rest of the carburetor settings are exactly the way they came out of the box from ATM. Anyway, once we had the carburetor swapped, we got the fuel pumped up to the carburetor from the mechanical fuel pump, and the Malibu lit right off. Instantly, as soon as we put the 950 on, you could definitely tell the car sounded different and the throttle response was much better. But the question is, will the bigger carburetor actually make more power? Okay, so from the 750's first pull to the 950's first pull, what's the difference?
About 3 horsepower.
Is that all?
That's it.
It's not bad for a little 750. It runs pretty good, but it definitely sounds crisper with the 950.
Oh, it sounds
Seems
way
more
different.
responsive.
It sounds way more responsive with the 950. So, let's try one more pull, and we'll lock the converter with the 950 and see what it does. Sound good?
See if it does the same thing.
All right. So locking the converter up, did it pick up any horsepower?
No, actually lost that time.
It lost that time.
About 8 horsepower.
So the 750 probably is a little bit better with the converter locked down low, but with the converter unlocked where the engine can, breathe up in the higher RPM, it definitely is better.
Yep.
So, well, let's let this thing run. We'll try and run some of this fuel out of it. We'll put some Ignite Red in it and we'll see what happens. Now, you remember what I told you about changing air bleeds to make the carburetors a little bit more efficient on tip-in and cruise? Well, that really bit me in the butt here because it took 3 hours of driving the car on the dyno to go from a quarter of a tank to completely empty. Now, sitting on the dyno, running the wheels on the roller would allow the engine to get a little bit warmer than I'd like it to be. It would get up to about 195 degrees, and then I'd shut the car down, let it idle, and the temperature would drop clear back down to 160. I'd put it back in gear, and then run the thing again, over and over and over again. After 3 hours, I finally gave up and went ahead and put 15 gallons of Ignite Red in the tank, and made a couple pulls off camera just to make sure we had the fuel system flushed out. We put 15 or 16 gallons of Ignite Red in the tank, and we've made 3 pulls consecutively, just getting the fuel from the tank up into the carburetor, getting all the old fuel flushed out. And how much have we picked up so far?
16 horsepower.
It's made 16 more horsepower without making any changes whatsoever. And every time we make a pull, it keeps getting better and better and better. 16 horse to the wheels is a lot, just changing fuel and nothing else. That's a lot. We can start to smell the stuff coming out the exhaust. It smells good. I can tell when I mat the throttle, it's like really responsive. I mean, it was really responsive before, but when I mat the throttle, it picks the nose right up and it goes.
If you can play the video of them side by side, you can tell the difference.
You really think so?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we're good to go to turn at least one kid on right now.
Turn them all.
All of it.
I want to turn one on
Okay.
first.
Okay.
Let me get my
We
laptop
can
out.
compare that to what it was last time.
It's going to be the fuel and it's on a radio.
Right.
So let me get my laptop out and I'll set the controller up and we'll make a pull on the first stage and see how it goes. Now the whole reason behind putting Ignite Red in the tank is that during the winter months, pump E85 drops from 85% ethanol all the way down to 50 or 60%, which will cause detonation and catastrophic engine failure on nitrous.
Let the bottle warm up a little bit and then we're going to hit it. This will be with one kit.
So it's time. Peer pressure is in full effect.
$657.
657 to the tire?
Yep.
That's what? 37 horsepower more than it made the last time it was here?
Yeah, I'll pull that up in a second. I believe it's somewhere in that range.
I think the last time we were here it made 620
I think it
and 720 foot-pounds.
Get it pulled up.
Oh my God.
That's 624 and 720 was last time. So
Oh my God.
33 horsepower.
33 horsepower, but look at the torque.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Dude, that's serious. The only difference is the radial and Ignite Red. It's the only difference.
Sounds like creek water fuel.
Yee. Old Malibu loves radials and Ignite Red. Dude, that's really good.
Yeah, very good.
God, it smells so much better than that nasty ass pump E85.
Smells good.
Dude, it smells like bourbon whiskey. Like it smells like the real thing. And then it's got a little hint of like race gas in it. But God, it smells so good. Well, you guys want to make one more on the first stage, or should we just go ahead and turn the second one on?
What's your call, boss?
Let's go to 2.
I say
I
we
think
go
we
to the
go
second
two.
stage.
Second
Go
stage.
big or go home.
Go big or go home?
Because we never got to do the second stage last time.
Right. So here's where the rubber really starts to hit the road. Below 200 horsepower, nitrous is all fun and games. But once you cross that 250 horsepower threshold and start spraying multiple stages, you better have everything right. So I double-checked everything in my Nitrous Express Max 5 controller and got ready to turn on both stages. The 150 horsepower first stage will come on first, followed by the 200 horsepower second stage a half a second later. $761 to the tire.
Almost 762.
What's the torque?
957.
957. Through an unlocked converter.
Yeah. That's what you're getting. The converter's working good. Yeah.
That's a good converter, isn't it?
Very good.
Try one more pull. I want to turn both kits on and lock the converter and just see what it does.
Okay.
So locking the converter, it made 776. So it picked up 15 horse to the rear tires locking the converter. So it's pretty good information.
Very good.
I think the car would be a little bit faster with the converter changed. Like Bubba Rafferty at 501 Performance, Perfect Converter Company. He built this converter for my 355. It was not intended for 421.
Yeah.
It was intended for nitrous, but a small cubic inch.
Probably not that kind of power.
No, not that kind of power. So I think we can take some of this information back to him and say, here's what it did. Let's make a little change. But tomorrow is going to be the real test. I mean, if we take it to track tomorrow and it's blowing through the converter, like a dyno is one thing, but on-track testing is totally different.
Yeah,
So
if it's screaming and ain't picking up nothing, then
right, because what we're doing here is we're loading it with the dyno. What we're doing on the track is we're loading it with 3,800 pounds. And that's two totally different things. And I think when we go to the track tomorrow, we're going to find out that locking the converter is going to be detrimental to getting this thing together. I think most likely what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to probably have to lock it after I put it in second gear and lock it and let second gear get a good run at third, unlock it and then hit third and then lock it back in again. That's a lot for somebody to do. Right, because I'm afraid what's going to happen is by the time it gets through second gear and I stick it in drive, I think the converter is going to be so far behind the drive shaft speed that when I hit it, it's just going to kill it. So I really feel like I'm going to have to lock it in second gear to give it a run at high. I don't know if shifting it into high with a converter lock will be a problem. I don't want to break it. I mean, let's think about this. 777, how much did it make?
776.
776 to the tire through a 700 R4 transmission. Come on. That's a stock input shaft 700 R4. So I don't know if shifting it into high with a converter lock will be a problem, but we're going to find out.
It's the only way to know.
Only way to know. You guys ready to go get dinner? Let's unbelt this thing.
It's been radio and belt. It's been driving for 3 hours.
I think I have cameraman fatigue. I'm starting to drop the phone. Are we in a position that anything could get scattergascard tomorrow?
We're in a position to scattergascar something every time we
That's any chance you get.
I want to go ahead and make one more pull on motor. I'm just interested to see what it makes on motor. After we've thrown that much nitrous to it, just go back to motor pass and just see what it does. So it's right back to almost exactly where it was before we made the nitrous pull. Yep. Clean bill of health. So thankfully, the old Malibu survived 7 hours of being strapped down to the dyno here at Carolina Performance. After making 776 horsepower to the rear tires, the 700 R4 and the torque converter that Bubba Rafferty built me for my 355 survived. So Vicky and I loaded the Malibu up on the trailer behind the 64 and we head back to the hotel so we can get a good night's sleep to get up the next morning and head to Wilkesboro Dragway, which is only a short 15-minute drive from the Hampton Inn up 421 to Dragway Road. And trust me, you won't miss it. This is my second time coming down to Wilkesboro in less than a month, but it's the first time Vicky's ever been here. And even in the dead of winter, she can clearly tell why I really like coming here. The layout of the track is incredible, the scenery is awesome, and the people are super friendly. We always feel welcome every time we come down. Anyway, I parked the truck and trailer in the staging lane so Vicky doesn't have to walk so far back and forth to film. Then I unload the car, let the engine warm up, make a couple little tweaks to the carburetor, air the tires down, and go up to check out the track surface. And that's when I realized things weren't going to quite go the way I had expected today. You see, this is a no prep test and tune, and I thought that one lane was going to be prepped and the other lane no prep.
Thoughts?
Wheel, probably not the best place to be on a radial today, but we'll do the best we can. I guess I just had so much going on to get ready to come down here that I didn't pay close enough attention to my messages. So I go ahead and do a pretty long burnout and back up on the track using the driver's side rear view mirror to try and put the car right in the groove. Unfortunately, that was going to be the least of my worries on this pass. Now this is a perfect example of how testing on a dyno does not necessarily equate to good on-track performance. Unfortunately, the air bleed changes I've made to the carburetor back home to run on Winter Blend E85 have left the carburetor with a terrible lean spot. Well, I went up there and stabbed the throttle. It was a little bit lean and it balled off the starting line. I pedaled it and got back in it, which really upset the suspension, and the whole run was just garbage.
Junk.
Nothing good came of that.
other than I did find out that I needed to richen up the idle mixture screws. So working on that right now. We'll make a shock adjustment with the track. It's really, really slippery.
Yeah.
There probably isn't going to be any nitrous passes made today.
Okay. You want that?
But, I mean, that's why we're here.
Right.
The problem is the fuel that I've been on is pump E85, which you have to lean the carburetors out a little bit to run that stuff. But when you put really good ethanol in, like Ignite Red, you really need to richen the carburetors up a little bit. But I mean, it's been a while since I've been on red. I knew I was probably going to have to do that. May have to make some jet changes for the fuel.
Hey, I know a guy that knows how to change jets.
Unfortunately, the guy that knows how to change jets left his jet kit and his air bleeds back in Ohio.
All right, so I loosened the front shocks up 3 clicks just because the track's so slippery. Aired the tires back down. We're going to start at 15 pounds. See what happens. I've richened the idle mixture screws up to help cover up that bog when it leaves. The air's really good today, so we'll see if it goes down this time.
Now, the best option would have been to change the air bleeds and up the jet in the carburetor, but since I left all that stuff at home, I'm only left with one option: opening up the idle mixture screws. The second pass, the car left the starting line much better, although it did bog just a little bit. The problem is it lost traction at about 300 feet.
So all I really got out of it was a 60 foot. It went 145 with an 8 on motor with a 750, and it did stumble just a tiny little bit. The car's going to be fast. It's going to be fast on a radial, but it's just not going to happen here today, I don't think. It's been too cold the last 2 nights down here. There's just not enough heat in the track, and being on a radial, there's probably no way. I'm going to make another adjustment to the carburetor. I'm going to add a little bit more fuel to it to see if I can get the stumble out of it. And then the other thing I'll probably do is throw the 950 on. The 950 may be a little bit better. The 750 has always been lean, a little bit leaner, and it cruises a lot better. But on this Ignite Red, it's a little bit too lean. The 950 may be just right. So we'll see what happens. At least I can get that done this weekend, find out where I'm at on my tuning.
Dude, at least we're in the sunshine and it's like 58 degrees and nice. I don't care what you go, I'm just enjoying the weather.
Yeah, me too. It's nice.
So for this next pass, I try to leave it a little bit higher RPM, but in doing so, it actually made the problem worse. Often leaving at a higher RPM will help a situation where the engine stumbles right off an idle. Leaving at a slightly higher RPM increases signal to the booster due to increased air velocity through the venturi. However, it decreases the amount of pump shot available.
Well,
it stumbled really bad, so the 60 foot's definitely going to be way slow. And it spun all the way down the track, and it finally got to the point where I was in high gear and it was moving around so bad that I just let out of it and coasted through. But yeah, it was a 158 60 foot. It only went 708 at 94, letting out of it. So I'm going to try the 950 carburetor on it. I think the track's getting a little bit better as the cars go down. I'm just going to go ahead and swap to the 950 for today and see if it'll go down without stumbling. The 950's always been a little bit more rich, I think, and more tuned towards the performance application than the 750's always been kind of my cruise around carburetor. But we'll see how this goes.
I have good news.
What?
The track owner is currently burning you up a hamburger.
Oh, good. That sounds really good.
I really wish I would have brought my jet kit and my air bleeds with me so that I could tune these carburetors properly. And to be quite honest, even if they just had the air bleeds that they came out of the box with, they would have probably been just fine on Ignite Red. But at this point, it is what it is. And it's also a reminder that we don't race dynos. Just because something runs really good, makes really good power on the dyno, doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to make really good passes at the track.
Okay, so put the 950 carburetor on it, and I tested it back here off the foot brake in the staging lanes. It's very responsive. I think it's going to be okay. 950 even sounded better last night on the dyno, even though it only showed 3 more horsepower. We don't race dynos. So even though the dyno information last night is helpful, it's not the be-all end-all. So we're going to go ahead and make this pass. I lowered the tire pressure down to 14.3 pounds. Left the shock settings alone from the last pass. It almost made a full pass, but it was very slippery. So we'll see what happens this time.
Basically what I'm trying to do here is take a drag radial and make it work like a slick by running it low on air pressure and allowing the tire to wrap up. Much like turning the idle mixture screws out to cover up a lean situation on the carburetor, this is not the optimum way to tune the car to get down the track. But since this is the only set of rear tires I've got, it's my only option to make a clean hit today. Thankfully, the 950 carburetor left the starting line, and the shock and tire pressure changes I made helped the car make a full lick.
So that's a new personal best 60 foot. It went 143. This is on motor now. It only went 685, which that's right there where it ran last time, but the difference is it's spinning all the way down the track.
Right.
Like, I've never been so nervous to go 680s in my entire life. I can feel the tires shuddering all the way down the track, and it's just kind of, you probably can't see it in the video. You can't see in the video what I can feel in the
Right.
seat. And it's very sketchy. There's no way I'm turning the nitrous on that car today.
Yeah. I'm good with that.
143 60 foot's a new personal best. I mean, I think
On
the car,
motor?
yeah, on motor. I think yeah, last time I was going 142 on spray, just bringing it in gradually.
Mm-hmm.
But there is absolutely no way I'm turning that nitrous kit on today. There's no way. Like that's as good as I can get down the track right there, 685 and 97.
Well, let's go get your burnt burger.
While I've been working on the car today, Vicky's been hanging out on the starting line with Corey Stamper and this young man, Lucas Sanchez. And according to Vicky, this kid's pretty ornery. And he's definitely got an answer for anything and everything.
Do you help out around here?
Yeah.
I saw you kind of helping with the water box guy.
That'd be
Some
Chris.
dad's got to
Chris.
hurry and get the truck done.
Uh-huh.
I hate saying that in front of the camera. You can forget that. You can forget that one.
So how old are you?
About to turn 9 in April.
About to turn 9.
They're right now on me.
You gonna race when you grow up?
He's already over here trying to hustle me on some RC racing.
Oh.
I'm trying to beat this one right here with his box stock.
Oh.
Old Lucas has been busy trying to hustle Corey on his box stock car, and he's also got some advice for me.
What's Bill need to do?
Just letter E.
Ladder E.
So by the time I was done testing, this guy shows up back in my pit. And it didn't take me too long to realize he's watched every video.
Tell him what you told me.
What'd you tell him?
I told her to let the Malibu eat.
Let the Malibu eat.
Ladder E.
Well, that's about as close as it's going to get to eating today, son. I'm going to tell you that right now. I was like a cat shitting razor blades trying to get down that track. You hear me?
I mean, it was kind of like it. You said it.
Yeah.
Since you said
it.
So me, Vicky, and my new friend Lucas go over to the grill to discuss proper grilling techniques for hamburgers and hot dogs. There was a little confusion as to what that meant, but I assured him if he just kept cranking up that knob, my hamburger would turn out just fine.
Again.
Lack of maintenance, as Uncle Bucko says.
That's right.
What's lack of maintenance?
To you, that.
What? That carburetor?
Yep.
There ain't nothing wrong with the carburetor. Look at the damn trailer. If you're going to talk about lack of maintenance, look at the trailer.
Yep, go clean it.
Go clean it.
I think your other one got ripped.
His otherin', your otherin'. Did you hear that?
Other.
Your otherin'.
Otherin'.
Otherin's all one word down here.
This is about the time that young Lucas and I had a real serious conversation about how women just don't listen to what they're asked to do.
So when you say she needs to shop since somebody stole your truck.
Yeah, she don't do it.
Look, this is what she's gonna do. Hey, Billy, my.
Yeah, she calls Billy. She calls Uncle Bucko. She calls every damn person but the sheriff when my truck gets stolen.
That sounds not true.
You'll figure that out when you get older. They don't listen for shit.
So after my heart-to-heart with young Lucas, it was time to pack everything up and start our journey back to Ohio. Unfortunately, it's time to go home to the cold, the wet, dreary weather. And although my testing today at Wilkesboro didn't go the way I'd hoped, there's one thing I am going to get to test on the way home, guaranteed. Fuel economy and the old 64's ability to climb Fancy Gap out of North Carolina up into Virginia. The last time I was down here, I pegged the temperature gauge at 250 degrees due to the fact that I couldn't lock the torque converter climbing this grade. And to be honest, this was just as important to me to test the truck on this hill as it was to take the Malibu down there and find out what it would do on Ignite Red. With the torque converter locked in the 700 R4, the old 64 climbed the grade without a single problem. The truck maintained a steady 65 miles an hour from the North Carolina state line all the way to the top of the grade to Fancy Gap, Virginia. We drove straight through and made it home around midnight, and then got up the next morning to unload the Malibu and put everything away, with the help of my two associates, of course, and Uncle Bucko.
What the you break this time?
Rubble, rubble, rubble.
I'm gonna robble you here in a minute.
I didn't break anything. Well, okay, I broke one little thing. It spit a torque converter bolt out, so evidently, whoever installed it over-tightened the bolt.
Oh, really?
That's what I'm guessing.
Yeah, we were guessing wrong.
So we put it on the dyno, and the very first pull we made on motor, it spit a bolt out the bottom, and I was afraid to even look. We did pull it back in the shop after we ate dinner that night and checked it, and it had a converter bolt that had broken off in the converter. Bubba Rafferty built this converter for the 355. Much lower horsepower, right? It's got 3/8 converter bolts, and I don't think that's big enough. I called Bubba today, and he said he wants to build me a whole new converter for the 421 because that is a far cry from the 355 that little converter was built for to begin with. And I think it's a little bit too loose, so he's going to go ahead and build me another one. But in the meantime, we got to get this thing jacked up and get transmission out of it, pull a converter out of it. We'll probably do that tomorrow and start getting this thing ready, because I think I might look for another place to go test.
Break something else?
Yeah.
Are you gonna get a converter like Billy put in the S10?
No, it's not even close. Like, this is not anywhere near 2,000 horsepower, Slim. It made 760 on the dyno, not 2,000.
Well, you know I like to have things so they don't break.
You just don't want to work.
No, I just don't want to have break broken shit. It's my life, and my truck's about to be broken, so...
What's the matter with your truck?
It needs all brakes all the way around. I pulled that thing out of a fence row.
Lack of maintenance.
Yeah, I pulled it out of a fence row and haven't had a minute to maintain my own stuff because somebody keeps breaking the hell out of everything, along with Junior.
Speaking of Junior, Vicky and I went down to visit him last night while he was working on his S10 down at his shop. He's finally got the fuel injection system thing figured out and his little 372 small block up and running. So there's a really good chance he and I may go together someplace this coming weekend to go test, so long as nothing else breaks between now and then. All right, welcome back everybody. So good and bad this weekend. Good testing at the dyno, that was all good, everything good. But unfortunately I wasn't paying attention to my messages. I thought that the test and tune down at Wilkesboro would have one lane prepped and one lane not prepped, and that wasn't the case, and that's my bad. That was my fault. It's okay, because any data is data that I didn't have before. Any data is better than no data, and there's going to be times where I have this car out on radials and I want to get into a class and I need to know what I need to do and what I need to expect. And you know, that deal, it was just really cold down there a couple of days before I was there, and the rubber on the track was just very hard, very cold, non-pliable, I guess is what I would say. And radials have an awful hard time getting a hold of something like that, and very dangerous to try and run a radial on an unprepped track like that. The car was very loose, although you can't hardly see it in the videos. At the beginning of the day, you could hear the tires squealing as it was going down the track. But my thing is, if I wreck this car or pile it up into a wall, that ends my content. That costs me an awful lot of money. It destroys a really nice low mileage car. None of those are going to get me anything that I want in life. If I pack it in and call it a loss and I go home with a car in one piece, that's still a win for me. If I pile it up into a wall and tear it up and blow it up and all that, I just look like an idiot. There's no sense in that. There's just no reason to do that. I know there's a lot of people that watch this channel for advice and maybe trying to learn something. And the lesson that I would like everybody to learn from my trip this weekend is that it's okay. It's 100% okay to say, you know what, I'm not prepared for the conditions today. I would rather go home in one piece. I would rather my car go home in one piece rather than risk overdriving it, overpowering the track, driving beyond your limits or the limits of the track surface, and piling your shit up and wasting a lot of time, a lot of money, wasting a good car. And let's be honest, if you're out there racing, either for a living or for a hobby, and you've got some sponsors that help you put the car out there and put it down the track, you're not making them look good either by piling your shit up. Now, accidents happen. That's just a fact of life. That's just a part of racing. But what is an accident when you know better, or you know that the car isn't capable of handling what you're trying to do, or the surface isn't capable of handling the amount of power that you're trying to put down? Kind of a gray area. I'm old enough to know better on a lot of things, not just this, but in this particular case, I chose to take the car home in one piece and not push my luck, because obviously, from what I felt driving the car, that was not the time to turn the nitrous on and try to prove a point that the car is fast, or trying to make a video, or just trying to make content. I'm already making content by being there. The other thing is, if I take this car down to Wilkesboro and I pile it into a wall, that doesn't make the track look good. It doesn't help the track bring people in and all that. So, you know, I have to be careful what I do. We all need to be careful what we do. And so that's my that's my lesson for today, guys. It's 100% okay to say, you know what, I'm not prepared for this today. The car's not prepared for this today. It's not a good idea. I'll go home and do some more work, and we'll come back and we'll race another day, or we'll try something another day. We'll turn the power up another day. But today's not the day. It's okay to do that. It's okay to be that guy, to load your shit and go back home in one piece. It's 100% okay. I promise you. For the track operator, the people that are also there trying to test and not get stuck in a staging lane while they clean up your car off the wall and all that, it's okay. So 776 horsepower. I've got a goal in mind with this car. I don't know if I'll be able to achieve it. I just need to get really sharp with the pencil and do some homework. I'm definitely going to have to do some front suspension work. I think the car definitely needs more travel due to the fact that the front end of the car is so heavy. I'm considering putting some trick springs in the front, some taller upper ball joints. Obviously, it's going to need an alignment, and it's also going to need a bump steer kit. And all of those things are in the works. I've already got 90% of those parts here, and I'm working with Lucor Automotive in Columbus to bring the car in so they can do a detailed video on exactly how to set the front suspension up, install the parts, do the alignment, and make sure the car is safe, extended brake hoses, the whole thing. There's a lot that goes into that, and I really look forward to working with everybody at Lucor, because they've done a fantastic job for us in the past. So look for that coming up. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I talked to Bubba Rafferty today at Perfect Converter, and he's building a new converter for the car this week, specifically built for the 421. The converter that's in the car is going back to Bubba's, and I'm going to trade it in towards the new one. And this one's going to be freshened up, and I think he's going to resell it. So if you're in the market for a 700R4 or 4L60E, this is a really, really good converter. It's just not quite tight enough for what I'm trying to do at the weight I'm trying to do it at. So if you want to talk to Bubba about a converter, you can possibly buy this one if you're in the market for one. He's going to freshen it up and resell it, and I'm going to go pick up a new one this week, I hope. So that's about it for tonight, guys. I need to get this video finished up. Thank you to everybody in Wilkesboro, North Carolina that made us feel welcome. Everybody at the hotel, the track, the restaurants, everybody down there was really, really nice to us, and we greatly appreciate it. It made us feel very welcome, and I feel like we've got a second home at Wilkesboro. We'll see everybody, maybe, let's see, today is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe Thursday. I've got a lot to get done this week. We'll have a lot of content coming. You're probably not going to believe what's coming next. I'm about to do something everybody thought would be unthinkable for me, automotive-wise.
What's Bill need to do?